Hey everyone, and welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into MongoDB's Q3 2024 performance today.
All right, sounds good.
We've got their 10Q filing with all the detail.
Lots to unpack there.
Yeah, so we'll be extracting some key takeaways, seeing what's driving these results, and highlighting anything particularly interesting for folks who want to learn more about this company.
Absolutely. Should be interesting.
Let's jump right in. So right away, MongoDB reported a net loss of $9.7 million for Q3.
Hmm.
Now, that might sound like not great, but it's actually an improvement from the $29.3 million loss from the same period last year.
Right, and this shrinking loss, it's a trend we've been seeing. It tells us they're not profitable yet, but they are moving in the right direction.
It's a good sign.
Yeah, it begs the question, though, how can a company with a growing user base like MongoDB still be operating at a loss? That's something we'll have to dig into.
Definitely. So it's a bit of a puzzle. But let's shift gears for a moment and look at their revenue. MongoDB reported $529.4 million in revenue for Q3, a 19% year-over-year increase.
Strong.
That's pretty impressive.
It is, and this really points to the strength of their core business. What stands out to me is that a huge chunk of that growth comes from their subscription business, particularly MongoDB Atlas, their cloud-based database service. Actually, Atlas revenue now represents 68% of their total revenue.
Wow, 68%.
Yeah,
So that's a clear sign that they're going all in on the cloud.
absolutely.
I mean, think about it. We use cloud services every single day, whether we're streaming music or storing photos. Businesses rely on it heavily, too. And MongoDB seems to be riding that wave with Atlas.
Yeah, and it all ties back to their land and expand revenue model. They try to attract new customers with a basic subscription, get them comfortable with the platform, and then encourage them to expand their usage over time.
Right.
It's a classic strategy.
So it's like getting your foot in the door and then taking over the whole house. And the filing shows that it seems to be working.
Yeah.
The number of customers with $100,000 or more in annual recurring revenue increased significantly. But there's got to be a catch, right?
Yeah. Well, there's always a catch. In this case, it's the global macroeconomic environment. Factors like inflation and rising interest rates have affected the growth rate of those existing Atlas applications.
I see.
Even though businesses are moving to the cloud, some are having to tighten their belts a little.
Makes sense. It's a reminder that even a successful tech company like MongoDB isn't immune to what's happening in the broader economy.
Exactly.
So we've got a shrinking loss, strong revenue growth, but this tricky economic climate to deal with. What else is happening behind the scenes?
Well, the filing reveals that MongoDB is investing heavily in several key areas.
Okay,
Research and development, sales and marketing, and global expansion.
that makes sense. In the fast-paced world of tech, if you're not innovating and growing, you're falling behind.
Right, exactly.
But these investments got to be adding to their costs, right?
Right, for sure. For example, they've increased their research and development headcount by 11%, which obviously means increased expenses in the short term.
So it's a bit of a balancing act. Spending money to fuel future growth. But that spending contributes to those current losses.
It's the classic startup dilemma.
Makes you wonder, is this level of investment sustainable?
That's a great question, and one we'll definitely need to explore further.
Yeah, it's a tough question for sure. And the filing also highlights another challenge for MongoDB:
Okay.
competition.
Hmm.
The database market is pretty crowded these days. They're facing pressure from both the legacy providers
Right.
and these new cloud-based players.
Okay, so who are we talking about here? You mentioned legacy providers. Those are like the big names, the Oracles and IBMs of the world.
Yeah, exactly those guys. They've been around forever, and they have these really deep relationships with large enterprises.
All right, makes sense.
But then you also have the cloud giants,
Uh-huh.
like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform.
All the big names.
They have these massive resources, and they all want a piece of this database pie.
Yeah, sounds like MongoDB's got their work cut out for them.
For sure, they're
Yeah.
surrounded. So how do they plan to stay ahead of the game with all this competition?
Well, innovation is key. The filing really stresses the need for MongoDB to constantly come up with new features, enhancements, just to stay ahead of the curve.
Keep moving.
Yeah, what's cutting edge today is obsolete tomorrow, right?
Absolutely.
They can't afford to just stand still.
Right. Makes sense. But let's take a step back for a second. Why should anyone listening to this care about MongoDB's financial performance or, all this competition in the database market?
Well, I think understanding how companies like MongoDB are doing financially, knowing their strategic direction, It helps all of us make more informed decisions.
As users, as consumers.
Exactly.
So like if you're a developer and you're thinking about using MongoDB for your next project, this deep dive gives you some valuable insights.
Yeah, knowing that they're investing heavily in the cloud and that they're constantly innovating,
Right?
it might make you feel more confident about their long-term viability.
But also knowing about the challenges they face.
Absolutely.
Like all that competition.
That helps you assess the risks. For them.
Exactly. Make a more informed decision. It's about making smart choices, choosing tools and technologies that are going to be around for a while, backed by a company that's doing well financially and strategically.
Right, exactly.
But this goes beyond just developers, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, MongoDB's success or even failure, it affects all of us in a way.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Everything we do online these days generates tons of data. Shopping, socializing, working, all of it.
Data.
And that data needs to be stored somewhere, managed, analyzed.
Securely.
The companies that build and manage these databases, they're really shaping our digital world in a lot of ways.
They're the backbone of everything we do online.
Yeah, and MongoDB, with its focus on the cloud and its commitment to innovation, they're positioning themselves to be a major player in this data-driven future.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about their overall performance, the growth of Atlas, their investments, the competition, and even how it ties into the bigger picture of our data-driven world. But there's one piece of the puzzle we haven't really talked about. Profitability.
The big question.
Right. Can MongoDB actually turn all this revenue growth and these investments into actual profit?
That's what we need to figure out.
All right, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been looking at MongoDB's Q3 2024 performance, and it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack.
We've seen strong revenue growth, some pretty ambitious investments, and a level of competition that's a bit intense.
No kidding.
But the big question, the million-dollar question,
Yeah.
can they actually achieve profitability? Can they make some money?
Well, the 10Q doesn't exactly give us a clear answer on that. They actually state that they expect to keep operating at a loss for the foreseeable future.
So no victory lap just yet.
Not quite yet.
But they must have some kind of plan to turn things around, right?
No.
What's their long game?
Well, their strategy really hinges on that revenue growth continuing.
Yeah.
Which is primarily driven by their Atlas platform, that cloud-based service. So the thinking is, as more and more businesses move to the cloud,
Right.
the demand for Atlas will just keep going up, bringing in more revenue, eventually pushing them into profitability.
Okay, so it's a bet on the cloud, a bet on Atlas, and a bet on scale.
Pretty much.
If they can get enough customers on board, those profits will follow.
That's the idea.
But isn't that kind of risky? I mean, we talked about how competitive the cloud market is already.
Yeah, it's definitely a calculated risk. And, the global economic climate adds another layer of uncertainty.
Right.
If businesses start tightening their budgets even more...
Because of inflation, all those...
Exactly. That could definitely slow down Atlas adoption.
So they're dealing with all these external factors they can't really control.
It's like trying to build a house on shifting sand.
Yeah, good analogy. But what about internally? Can MongoDB do anything to improve its chances of reaching profitability, aside from just hoping for the best?
Oh, for sure. Aside from attracting new customers, which is always important,
Right.
they need to really focus on keeping those existing customers happy.
Right. Make them want to stay.
Yeah, and encourage them to use more of their services.
That's where the land and expand model comes in.
Yeah, exactly. If they can successfully upsell, cross-sell to their existing customer base.
Right. Get them using more and more.
That's going to have a huge impact on their bottom line.
It's about maximizing the value from every customer, not just getting new ones.
Absolutely.
But even with a solid strategy, there's still no guarantee, right?
Well, that's the nature of business, right?
Sure.
There are always going to be challenges. They need to keep innovating, stay ahead of the competition, adapt to the market as it changes.
Stay agile.
Yeah, all while managing those costs effectively.
So it's a bit of a high wire act without a net.
Yeah, that's the tech world for you.
That's the life we've chosen.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to really understand these financials. It's not just about looking at where they are right now in terms of profit or loss.
Right.
It's about seeing their long-term vision, their growth strategy, and all the challenges along the way.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways? What do we want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the big takeaway is that MongoDB is a company with huge potential. They've got a great product, a growing customer base, and a pretty bold vision for the future.
Uh-huh.
That focus on the cloud, especially with Atlas, seems to be paying off.
Yeah, it's working for them.
But the road to profitability is long, it's going to be bumpy, there will be obstacles along the way.
There always are.
The competition is fierce, the economy is a bit unpredictable. They really need to execute their strategy perfectly if they want to succeed.
So it's a story that's still being written, chapter by chapter.
Exactly. It's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into MongoDB's Q3 2024 financials. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
As always, we encourage you to check out the show notes for a link to that 10Q filing. You can dive into the details yourselves.
Dive even deeper.
That's right. Until next time, keep learning and keep diving deep.